Hey, what's everybody? Welcome to the Art Vigil Show. Today we have a special guest, Mike Rippey. Mike, how you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
That's good. Well, he's better because he's a former Dolphin fan. Chris Larkin, how you
Yes,
doing?
sir. Doing well. Thank you very much. Glad to be
All
here.
right. Here comes the intro.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
This is the Art Vigil Show.
Art Vigil. Welcome to the Art Vigil Show!
Let's face it, this is not the worst thing you've caught me doing.
Undefeated out loud, baby. Everything is alright, baby. We on the road to riches, and you ain't getting no ride, baby.
All right. I love that intro. What'd you think, Mike?
I loved it.
Come on.
No, I love that you said I was a former Dolphins fan.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Good to hear.
really disappointed because everybody knows I'm a Dolphin fan, and I was hoping that, we can have honest conversations because on Spaces, you were very honest about the Dolphins.
Yeah.
You were right, and you were right, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you think about that, Chris?
I'm surprised he's admitting he's wrong. This is a friendly mark this date down. What's today? The 26th?
Hey, let me take a second here. This is the first time I've been on a show in a good amount of time, over a month or so. So I appreciate you having me. I gotta say, thank you, Art. Thank you, Chris.
Anytime.
Look, I mean, Chris, you didn't have to wear your Patriots sweatshirt and stuff. You knew you had a Dolphins fan, a former one. You're really rubbing it in. But anyway, Art, you've always been a good guy since we've connected. And I love what you're doing with Undefeated. And I just want to give you your props and to keep going. Excited to see how that goes in 2025.
I really appreciate that. With that being said, would love to hear your background. I know you're a former Dolphin fan, so let's not rub it in. Yeah. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So many of you may have found me through social media on X, which have been pretty consistent with my sports commentary for now a while, over a couple of years. My appearance on Pat McAfee Show, which the content reached that far, was incredible, and you love to see people enjoying it over a lot of time. But originally, I come from the financial world, so I have a business degree from Syracuse. Originally from New York, live on the West Coast now. But obviously diehard sports fan and spend a lot of time thinking about sports, wanting to win because my teams don't win. So I don't know what that feeling is like with Chris and his Patriots sweatshirt. Art, you don't know about winning either because you're a Dolphins fan. I know what that's like. Same boat. So not to rub it in, but anyways, I'm a fan of teams that don't win. I'll name them: the Dolphins, the Rangers, you just named teams that don't. With Syracuse, we haven't won anything since I graduated. The Yankees, we did win when I was a little kid, but I don't even know what it's like to be in a championship. So anyways, I'm a little bit upset right now, but anyways, it's good to be here talking sports. What better time to be alive?
Absolutely. So just so you know, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. We've won 3 this century. I'm a Sharks fan. We have not won anything. San Jose Sharks. And I'm a Golden State Warriors fan, and we've won 4. Yeah, so I'm a Bay Area kid, and I left the Raiders because they moved to LA. And the only thing that's good in LA are beaches and chicks. So anything, the LA Kings, LA Dodgers, I don't really care about the Angels. They're just bad. Although they beat the Giants in 2001, that's a different discussion. The Lakers, although I do like Luka, that kind of makes me a little off-putting a little bit. But so I've felt some championships, just not with my Dolphins.
Yeah. See, this is what I'm talking about, Chris. You've got so many championships. I'm over here, Knicks, laughing stock of multiple generations. Dolphins have the longest non-winning streak, no playoff wins, and in all sports. New York Rangers have gotten to the finals, don't get me wrong, but have never gotten over the line since 94. The Yankees used to win championships when I was a little kid, but since have not won anything. I don't even know what it's like to feel the winning. I think I'm winning the most by listening to Art and Chris right now talk about their team.
Well, I am 50 years old, so I remember the Rod Russ days, the 3 and 14 days of the Patriots, or the 3 and 13 days. Sorry, the Steve Grogan roll bar getting absolutely destroyed by the refrigerator, Perry and those guys, and Mosi Tutupu and Sam Gash, one of the greatest football names of all time, getting destroyed by the Packers. So I mean,
that's like every season of a Dolphins fan. I mean, seriously.
And as a Red Sox fan growing up, I mean, you couldn't be more second fiddle than the Red Sox to the Yankees. So, I mean, the Celtics they're fine. And the Bruins, hockey's just fun to watch. And Terry O'Reilly, Cam Neely back in the days, just beating the crap out of each other. Great times.
Yeah, but they never won back then either, did they? The Bruins.
No, that's a recent thing, but it's not bad to be a New England fan. Now being a Notre Dame college football fan has been rough because we've gotten to that precipice numerous times, and poof. So.
Yeah, but you gotta admit this was a great year for Notre Dame football. I mean, what a season that they had this year. Come up short in the national championship, but still to get there, you gotta love Marcus Freeman. He's been incredible as the coach. He's brought Notre Dame back to prominence in that elite level, and you love to see it. So, from a college standpoint, you're still doing pretty good there. Again.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. No, well, Notre Dame's doing well. I'm happy with them.
Is Notre Dame an NIL game, or are they not doing that?
I'm sure they're in it somehow. I don't know for sure, but how can you not?
I mean, the Catholic Church has a lot of money. I'm just saying.
I'm gonna stay off of this one because we're on a recorded video, but I thought some things, but I'm out. I'm just.
Yeah.
Next
probably
topic.
the best.
We'll move on. Yeah, we'll move on from that
topic.
one.
So
we'll move on from that.
Tell me about that experience how did you find out about Pat McAfee? Were you watching? Did somebody text you? Did somebody put it up on Twitter or X?
It's funny that you ask about the Pat McAfee show because the irony of this is that when it was going on live, I wasn't even clear. I was actually traveling that morning. I remember I was on a flight, and I remember when I get off the flight, I was getting messages like asking me about the show and stuff, and I was completely confused by what people were saying, and I had gotten it on numerous ways, like text messages, direct messages, tweets, and I wasn't really clear what people were talking about because I had provided a number of content pieces on a weekly basis on Mondays a couple seasons back, my takeaways, and so I wasn't clear that they were using it then and talking about it, and I found out through sort of word of mouth from friends reaching out to me to tell me like, hey, dude, you realize you're on the show? So anyway, I appreciate Pat and AJ, especially, playing into my name and it's stuck and great appearance. And at least one of us, when I speak to myself or them, have gone on to big things. It's not me, but they have.
Well, they called you the Ripper, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And they, I'm pretty sure they actually in the show talked about how, we were basically like friends. And I'm just wondering when the call back comes.
I was just going to say, have they invited you back? Have they reached out to you at all?
Just wondering.
Have you reached out to them?
Yeah, every Monday. But
okay.
Work on your field goal.
Here's some more content. Come on.
Yeah. No. Look, they're Pat's I'd say the leader in sports broadcasting at this point from a kind of digital standpoint. So it's been impressive to watch. It was really cool to be on the show. And I'll probably get back there someday.
Nice.
I love it. So you were at the Super Bowl.
I was.
Past Super Bowl, one of my favorites ever because the Chiefs lost. Not a Chiefs hater. Not just saying. I was glad that they won 11 games with one score or less. Little referee help if you want to believe that. So what were your first of all, what did you think of the game? And then what were your key learnings or highlights of the game?
Oh, I think it was it was a shit game, right? Wasn't it the worst Super Bowl ever?
Mm-hmm. No, you're not old enough to watch the Broncos lose to like the Niners 55-7 or 10.
Still shittier than that. It's tough.
Yeah. And then the Patriots losing to the Bears.
Oh, no. They're going to say David Tyree. All right, good.
I don't even remember those games.
Well, that was a close game. I'm talking about games where So the 80s and 90s. What was that?
No, the Tyree game is a great Super Bowl. I mean, it's not the outcome that Chris wants, but I mean, it's a great Super Bowl moment and ending and stuff, right? This was by far, in my opinion, the worst Super Bowl from start to finish that I can recall in my my lifetime. I don't even think very close. I mean, it was boring. It was uninteresting. It was not close. It was a blowout. There was no highlight plays really, except for maybe that pick six, which was really kind of sealed the deal when it was already, it felt like over. I thought I didn't really understand the halftime show as much as I would have liked to. I know that's a little bit controversial. I thought, and more so, I thought the sound, it's not even that the performance from Kendrick was more like the sound was a little bit. I agree. So I just felt like from top to bottom, the Super Bowl was just awful. And I thought that I thought Tom Brady did a great job this year growing into the broadcasting role, but I thought specifically in the Super Bowl, and maybe this is just natural human instinct, they were so caught up on the Chiefs losing, they weren't doing enough conversationally during the moment of talking about the Eagles and what they were achieving in the moment. It was more of like, well, Chiefs could be coming back here. Mahomes might figure it out. As opposed to like the Eagles are dominating this game, doing everything from top to bottom, just wiping the floor with this team that just happens to be the Chiefs. Maybe we should focus more of the attention on the champion, not the team that's about to be, be the losers. So I thought from overall standpoint, it was a really bad Super Bowl. It happens because we've had a lot of great ones in a row. I will say New Orleans is a fantastic city to host the Super Bowl. Really cool, place. That they should put the game routinely and a great vibe from a city standpoint, but the game itself, trash.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. It was the first half was watching paint dry. It was and like you said, all they did was talk about Mahomes and how great he is and the three-peat and don't blink, you might miss something big, Xavier Worthy this and Patrick Mahomes and blah 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 blah. And they didn't say, like you said, they didn't say shit about Jalen or. I mean, there wasn't much to say about Saquon, but it was kind of a one-sided conversation in the booth. So I agree with that. And if the sound was bad during halftime, it didn't help watching it from home either. So it was terrible halftime show. But
were you at the game or were you hanging out in Bourbon Street?
I was watching the game, not from inside the stadium. I'll tell you the truth. One, it was my birthday. First time ever my birthday was on the Super Bowl. But more importantly, I'm the type of fan in person, I'd say, that most preferably would not go to games. Now, I've gone to my share of Dolphins games here or there when they're sort of in prime time. I think those are cool. Right. But the Super Bowl itself, I think there's just a different vibe when you're at a game as opposed to at your own couch watching, can hear it, can listen to the broadcast, can see it. It's just a different viewing experience. And I prefer usually not to go to games. And especially a game like the Super Bowl, unless you have a great setup, a seat, like, is it really great to sit pretty far away, not really be clued in on like what's going on in the game? Not so much for me. So I prefer not to go to games. And like I said, I've been to a number of games, obviously, as a Dolphins fan for a long time. But even those games, I'd usually only want to go to those games when they're not sort of at the 1 o'clock time frame. It's like the Monday night game, a Sunday night game. Okay, maybe for my team.
Standalone game.
Yeah, but usually I'd rather watch a game on TV or at a bar where you have it in a big screen. You don't really miss anything. You get a different view than going to the game. I just think going to the game is not such a great sporting experience, to be honest.
I don't disagree with that. So were you on Bourbon Street or were you in a hotel bar or where were you?
Yeah, no, we were on Bourbon Street and we enjoyed the game with a number of fans from the teams. And it was a good time. I mean, look, I've watched many Super Bowls. In fact, almost all the Super Bowls my entire life. Actually, all the Super Bowls with not having my team in the game. So I'm always just there watching, hoping for a good game.
Yeah.
You just said my team. I thought you were former.
I am. That's right. I've relinquished my fandom for the Miami Dolphins, and I blame them. So,
so how do you do that? Do you have to burn your stuff in effigy, or?
Well, look, I'm not burning jerseys. I'm not going to do anything like that. But I'm just I'm done because how many times are you going to let someone just bend you over and spank you and not even care to help you put your clothes back on or get dressed? Look, the Dolphins don't care about the fans. They do not care about the people that support the team. They have proven that from ownership down over the last 2 off seasons. They are not making the changes. The general manager is a joke, and they continue to let those people stay in positions even when they completely prove that they are failures and they are not getting the job done. And so why should I continue to support that? And after 30 plus years, I'm out. That's what I decided. I'm not going to let them control my emotions anymore. Done.
Wow.
Do you see any possibility down the road of getting back with them if things turn around?
So now that I will say this, it's really hard to. I mean, this is what happens with sports. You know, it's you get emotional and it's really hard to leave a team when you're a childhood. Look, I was a Dolphins fan since I was a little kid because of Dan Marino. The Dolphins, super easy to love, right? I mean, a great franchise. We had great coaches. From Shula to Jimmy Johnson. I mean, even when we had Dave Wanstead, it was okay.
Jay Fields.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I went through everything with this organization for 30 years. But you know what? The new ownership, and it's not so new anymore because Stephen Ross has been in charge for a while, does not care about the fans. He just does not care about the fans. And it's proven they do not make the changes when they very obviously need to. They're very fine and happy being very mediocre, giving you pretend to give you hope. And this offseason when they decided to bring back the general manager and they don't want to make the changes necessary, I'm done. So I don't say that I won't come back because look, they could sell it. A new ownership team could come in. A couple of years, things could change. It's possible I could return, but for the time being, I'm out here as a free agent. I'm looking at let's see, could I go to the Chargers? I'm trying to see.
No, the Chargers have worse luck than the Dolphins. Come on, no.
No, but I love Jim Harbaugh. I do love me some Jim Harbaugh.
That's fair.
That's what you were saying. Art. You like Harbaugh.
At least Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh wins. I'm sick of Mike McDaniel looking cool but not having any control over the team and being more concerned in that. So I'm looking for that team that at least I can be proud of, even if they lose. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll see. I'll find it. And otherwise, I'll care about fantasy.
There you go. We're going to talk about that in a second. Did you see the players voted for the
yeah. It's the only thing the only thing
Miami's exactly A+.
Right. Yeah. Great.
So maybe it's too comfortable. It's too nice. It's kind of like 100%. The Cowboys. Yeah, it's kind of like the Cowboys.
100%. I thought this. If they got A+ on everything because they're team playing and it's so nice, and maybe everything being so nice is not the way you win in the NFL because clearly the teams that are in the Super Bowl, Philadelphia and Kansas City, if you looked at those rankings, were both in the bottom 10.
Yep.
Just saying.
Yep.
I saw it.
South Beach. Maybe it's South Beach, but yeah, I saw that and I was like, oh God.
I will say that clearly because Miami has always gotten free agents to come to Miami and they're going to be the stars, the next big guy. I mean, whether it was Brandon Marshall at wide receiver, whether it was Ndamukong Suh on the defensive side, and everyone that comes to play for the Dolphins, how many times have they actually turned up to be just as good at Miami as somewhere else? Because I just don't see it. It's very rare that happens. It's either you've been homegrown, which is what Miami used to do, and they keep their homegrown players when it was Sam Madison, Patrick Surtain, obviously Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, right? It's just not worked over the last 15 to 20 years, and there's been no changes, which is the most disappointing part. They've just continued to just run the same playbook, which is mediocrity mixed with a little bit of hope, just a little bit, but it's all fake.
The only one I can think of that came in as a free agent would be Ricky Williams, but he was good for a couple of years. Wanstead used him too much. His idol.
You're right. He was. That's a good point. But think about it.
Right.
One over a 20-year period in Miami. We're talking about they're getting guys that are supposed to be good. I mean, we can look back to when they decided to go with Dante Culpepper over Drew Brees. How'd that work out? It just has never, ever worked out. I mean,
I have PST for that. I don't ever talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
How could only in Miami could you quite literally have the greatest college football coach ever as your head coach, and you guys still suck?
Yeah. No.
When we had Nick Saban, it used to be, Nick Saban, right? Because if you were in Miami, you hated Nick for a while because he was Nick Saban.
I still do.
Yeah, no, fair. But it's
ask anybody.
How could we possibly have had such a great football coach and still not be able to win anything?
Because we got Dante Culpepper.
I know. Our training staff was smart.
Just saying.
Yeah, the training staff. Saying.
So, this will be the last question about the Super Bowl. Are there any other things that you saw outside the game? You mentioned something, prior to us going live. You don't have to say it online if you don't want to. But before going live, somebody sucked at pickleball.
Oh yeah. Look, like I said, when New Orleans is a great city host to Super Bowl. It's tight. It's everyone is in a small area, so you can walk down the streets in New Orleans and you will see so many celebrities, players, athletes just all over. blending in. And then you have obviously something where no matter where the Super Bowl is, the NFL experience, really cool. You see different athletes signing autographs. You see the football players, different NFL stuff, really neat. I had a great opportunity to watch some of the pickleball, and I got to see Chris's quarterback, Drake May, there. Very competitive. Really came off as a winning personality, as a guy that as a young guy I could see is going to grow into being an elite player in this league, which I wasn't quite clear on prior to the Super Bowl experience when I saw him personally and kind of got that vibe from him. But I will say, Micah Parsons sucks at pickleball.
Drake May good, Micah bad. Okay.
In fact, Drake challenged Micah, and I think the first serve that Drake actually hit to Micah Parsons whiffed on the return. So Micah Parsons, great at football, terrible at pickleball.
All right.
Is he good at football? I think he's.
Come on.
I mean, he played for the Cowboys. All right.
I didn't say the Cowboys are good. I mean, Micah Parsons is good. We got to give him his love. Maybe he's,
right.
He talks a lot about they're always going to be the best, and we know that's not true. But
that's on his podcast.
Yeah, his podcast. Right. Go ahead. Yeah, put it this way. Mike is not podcasting about pickleball. Promise you that.
Maybe somebody will send this clip to him. You're like, he's going to start working out and showing his pickleball skills.
No, he's got no shot. Hey, send this clip to Michael. Michael, you can find me. I'm right there on social at Michael Rippey. You can tag me. I'll play you one-on-one anytime. I seen you play. You got no shot, dude. None. Whoa. I got a video. Man can't hit the ball. He's not a tennis player either, I promise.
Is it his side to side or is it eye-hand coordination?
No, I think Michael Part. Look, no shade at Mike at all. He's great, awesome football player, right? And this is all in fun. But I think his I don't know if he can't bend that low to get to the low shots. So maybe it was his first time playing the game. Maybe he never heard of ping pong before. Who knows?
Did you see the video of him trying to bring down the sumo wrestler?
No.
Oh, I saw it today. He could not move the guy.
Oh.
I'm like, we need some of those on the Dolphins on the offensive line, but I don't think they know how to play football. But we'll
bring
see.
him in.
Do the offensive linemen on Miami know how to play football?
Armstead, when he was healthy.
Oh, when was that? I'm confused.
I think when he played for the Saints.
Right.
Not for the Dolphins, but for the play for the Saints.
No, he was very healthy when he didn't play in Miami. It's true. You know who also doesn't play for Miami? The starting quarterback when the game matters. Isn't that funny too?
Right.
That's crazy, right? You give a guy $50+ million because that's what the market is, and he doesn't play in the important games when you have to play in them. Huh.
Right.
Right. All right, I'm done.
All right. We'll stop talking about it. We'll talk about AFC, but we don't AFC East real quick because you're former. I'm still a Dolphin fan to my own issues that I have. He's a Patriots fan. The team. I don't even hate the Patriots. Probably because I was old enough to remember when they really were really, really bad. The team that I hate the most is the New York Jets in the AFC East. What do you say?
Absolutely. I'm with you.
I'm with you guys both. Yeah, no, obviously as the Dolphins fan, the Jets have been a bitter rival, like the other teams in the East, but obviously the Jets and the Dolphins have that rivalry that's extended a long time. And the Jets are the type of team where they're worse than the Dolphins in the sense they never win anything. And but they act like they're always going to win, and this is the year, and then it's the same old Jets situation, right? So they've been a laughingstock. But we'll see what happens now. They do have talent on their team. You have to give them credit. I mean, they have a lot of elite young talent when you think about Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner. I never really was a big fan of Robert Saleh, but they removed him. That didn't change anything. And we'll see what Aaron Glenn does there. I mean, I think Aaron Glenn was a good player when he used to play, and he seemed like he had a good he seems like he has a good mentality. And then it's very hard to be good in New York because of all of the outside factors as far as media and the scrutiny. But I do think that, Aaron Glenn has a shot at least because of his demeanor. He's played the game. He's been around a while. He did a really good job in Detroit as defensive coordinator. And he's got some players to work with. So, plus he's following up some more terrible years. So, there's a chance that they could come around because they do have talent when you look at that roster.
Yep. I agree. They can't get any worse.
Well,
It's
that's
just from,
5 wins with Aaron Rodgers in 2 seasons. You can't do much worse.
and as long as they say the right things, they do the right things. It's just always for me been the fans too, like Yankee fans, Jet fans. You suck. You suck. Just a little self-help. Say it to yourself. Take a deep breath and go, it's okay to suck. I don't have to do the JETS chant with Fireman Ed when you're getting your ass kicked by 37 points.
Yeah, shouldn't Fireman Ed retire at least until they're like somewhat respectable again?
Well, he was gone for a couple of years and it was fantastic. You could watch
Yeah.
the games and like, oh, thank God that guy's not there. And now he's back. Son of a bitch. Just stop it. But fans are fans. But to your point, I mean, with the lack of winning in New York in general, I mean, all they got to do is put a good foot forward and get some love back. Because I mean, unless you think the Yankees are going to do well this year in New York, but
They
there
went
ain't
to the
much.
World Series. What are you talking about?
But you think they're going to do it again this year? I'll get into that
They have
later.
a great. Yeah. Okay.
There's not much to root for in New York. Like you said, the Knicks are the Knicks. The Jets are the Jets.
The Knicks are in a, when we think about the Knicks over the last 25 years, this is a great period for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they could come back and be this relevant and be competitive to the point where they're probably sixth in the league is pretty impressive from where they were always like the laughing stock, like literally laughing stock of a franchise for a while. So, the Knicks have definitely turned around. And you will say this, when you think about great sports and you just think about tradition and stuff, it's good in the NBA, I think, when the Knicks are good, because Madison Square Garden is such a great arena for sports and basketball specifically, that when the Knicks are relevant and you have good games at the Garden routinely, whether it's because of the Knicks players or their opponents, it's just an exciting thing you like to see. It's, as you could say this about, obviously, when you think about Boston. I mean, the Celtics are a legendary franchise. There's certain teams, I think, in sports, in each professional type of league, where it's just better for the league usually when those teams are prominent or at least relevant, as opposed to just being laughing stocks, because it makes it feel like it's more important, more valuable, more impactful when there's games at those arenas. Like when the Knicks suck and no one cares about games at the Garden, it's like less cool. But like when the Knicks are good and you got, Jokic coming in, or you got Shea Gilgeous coming in, or you got Anthony Edwards putting on a show there, it feels like more theater, right? And so, the Knicks have been all right.
I get you.
Yep. Well, I was on mute. I'm not sure how I hit my mute button, but I wanted to say, is Tyrod Taylor going to be the starting quarterback for the Jets?
No.
Who do we think? It's obviously not Rodgers.
No, it's not Rodgers.
And Kirk Cousins, the Falcons said that they're going to keep him. I think it's kind of they're blowing smoke.
Yeah, exactly. I don't believe that at all.
Right.
I think, I don't know who's going to be the quarterback for the Jets. One, I think there's a chance they could get Shedeur. But if they weren't able to get Shedeur because he didn't drop a few picks, and I can't remember, they have the 7th pick, the Jets, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so there could be a trade out there where they get a stopgap guy. There's someone out there. There's a lot of guys. People haven't really been talking about the different players. I mean, look, there's going to be some movement that people aren't thinking about when we think about their staff. Stafford's out there. Who knows what happens with him? I'm not saying he's getting traded to New York because I don't think that's realistic, really. But you think about different players. I just don't think that Tyrod is going to be the starter in New York. They'll do something, even if it's, not their permanent solution, but I think they'll do something that will give them more of a chance than I think Tyrod. But we'll have to see. There's a number of quarterbacks out there that I think have a chance to start next year that we're not starting. I'll give you an example. Like, I think that Jimmy Garoppolo has a chance to take on a starting role somewhere in the league next season, and no one's talked about him in a while because it felt like he's an afterthought. But when you think about what we saw with Darnold, what we've seen with some of these other quarterbacks in different spots, I think there'll be some interesting movement, and I just would be hard for me to imagine the Jets would just go with Tyrod. I think Tyrod could be in competition with someone, but I think they'll bring in some sort of name that gives them some, because look, ultimately in New York too, you want to sell tickets, you want to sell some excitement, and to do that, you got to bring someone in, even if it's not like the answer, but you got to be able to put this on them and say, hey, we've got this fresh blood, let's do it. You're trying to sell Jets ticket packages with Tyrod Taylor as your starting quarterback, and you're one of the Aaron Glenn, it doesn't seem like you're going to sell that much, right?
It doesn't.
Well, they're not bringing back Darnold.
No, I agree.
yeah,
I don't think they're
yeah.
bringing Darnold back, but my point is like they're gonna do. There'll be some options to either make a trade to do. I mean, because there's Justin Fields as a potential guy. I mean, there's some out of the box ideas, and we'll just have to see what happens. I'd be surprised if they just went with Tyrod.
I would love to see Russell Wilson go there and fail again.
Well, he would fail again.
He would fail, yeah.
Question about it. Yeah.
All right, you're a huge fantasy guy. I think that's how I found out about you, reading your Monday stuff, and again being on those spaces with Wolf and you and some other people. By the way, did you end up winning that league?
No, I did not.
Oh, you did not? Who ended up winning?
I can't recall. I got knocked out in the semifinals against Samuel. I forget I forget who it was. I think I had Cooper Kupp and he went for 0 that week. That was the week where he
remember that.
If he would have gotten like 6, I would have been advancing. But yeah, anyways, we did not win.
So how many leagues do you play in? Just the one or a bunch or different styles?
No, I played in I think I played in 7, maybe 8 leagues last year.
Wow. Is that the most you've ever played in?
It is. Yeah. Wow. I played in 5 the year before, and I thought that was a lot. And then I thought, well, if I'm spending this time, what's a couple more leagues when I'm already spending sort of the amount of time? Because I'm not, I'll be honest, I do most of the fantasy work in the off season. I come in, I have my thoughts, and I usually have a good foundational team set up where I don't need to manage it in season that much. Obviously, each year is different, but generally speaking, I'm usually more of a draft focused type of fantasy player where I can usually have most of the roster the way I want it through a draft, and then I have to make some adjustments here or there. And so I don't manage too hard in season.
So you're not watching the fantasy shows and saying, oh, this guy has this cornerback's the worst cornerback, I'm going to try to go get him. Do you make lots of changes during the season besides injury and bye weeks?
No, I mean, the only time I make a lot of changes in season is if I've either just been completely off base in what my initial projections were going to be, or more so injuries, obviously, you have to deal with. But like the thing I think that I excel at specifically, and I think if you follow my content, you'll have noticed and seen and will see in the future, is that I often can find a lot of the guys that are going to be good early on, in the sense that like before they become the stars. And so what makes it easier in fantasy for me is that the later rounds of drafts, I'm usually just grabbing a lot of these, like a lot of what you would call sleepers or targeting players. And I have a very good success rate in the later rounds. So it's like they might start as my bench guys, but a couple of them, become stars or they become very important in fantasy. And so it makes it easier from a roster construction to not worry about sort of free agents and so forth. I'll give you an example. Like I was very high on Jonnu Smith before this past season. I had talked about him in the offseason. I talked about the post that he was essentially free. He wasn't even being drafted, and he had high upside potential at the tight end position, right?
Especially in Miami.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
he was excellent. And you can go back 2 seasons. Like I was on the Kyren Williams train before that happened. I was so I've had some success being able to do that, and I think that's just because I have a really long-term knowledge of the NFL, and so I watch from college to NFL, and I have a pretty good eye for seeing like I think these guys are having an opportunity, and so it makes it easier to do more of my work on drafting than opposed to in season. And I will say this because you talked about, do I listen to different podcasts or guys? I do, to a degree. What I have found, and I'll be completely honest about this, is that the more that you listen to when it comes to fantasy media, the worse you do.
I agree. I agree 100% with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do the same approach. I do a lot of upfront work for the draft. So I picked up Ladd. Nobody even knew who the guy was.
Amazing.
And I'm just like, this guy's a stud. And they're like, granted, I didn't win, but he was starting by like week 4, week 5, because he's the man. And I bet you this year he's a top 5, not top 5, but top 4 round draft.
Yeah, he was excellent, especially down the stretch, Ladd. And as people got to know him, I will say this too. One of the things I think about fantasy is you got to remember, you need a lot of luck, right? Like you can be good. There's definitely skill involved. Ultimately, you need to get lucky. My whole take on fantasy in general is I believe if you made the playoffs, you had a good season. You want to win, obviously, but like I think you can make the playoffs usually based on your skill. But to win it all, you not only have to have that skill, you need to have luck, right? Because you never know the matchup the week that you're in. Like, you could have the wrong matchup. You could be playing the one team that goes off. There's just so many variables in the fantasy game. Your guy could run the ball for 200 yards but not score any touchdowns. The other guy can run the ball for 12 yards and have 3 touchdowns. And so there's a lot of luck involved in fantasy, and you have to remember that. So I love doing the content. I love talking about it, but I also understand I come from it from the perspective of you got to be lucky, and a lot of times things are just going to go against you because that's fantasy, and it always keeps it real.
No, I agree with that. So I know it's way too early for fantasy picks, but who do you think the top 5 quarterbacks will be next year?
Next season.
Next season.
Oh, no, it's funny you ask because I haven't thought about this. One of the things I do after this season ends, and obviously the fantasy season ends earlier than football. So I mean, fantasy's been done now for months, right? Is I really step away. Like you don't see me putting out content right now for sports and fantasy specifically. It's a complete break. I don't think too much about it. I kind of let it all settle for a while. I will say, when we think about quarterbacks, just off the top of my head, what I'm looking forward to next year, it's like ultimately right away in my head, I go, okay, well, we know Josh Allen's going to be back there in the top 5. We know Jalen Hurts is right back there in the top 5, right? You gotta add Jaden Daniels there because obviously Jaden has been ascending and was excellent throughout the season. So right there, I'm already thinking those 3 are clearly there. Now we have to think about, well, who else could potentially be there? And you start to play around with the, like, where's your next sort of top guys? So I would just say Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts for sure are in my top 3. But I have to then do some more work. I mean, is there someone you're thinking specifically? I would just think that Jaden makes that jump up there for sure.
You're not afraid of he's going to have the sophomore slump like CJ did?
Not at all. No, I thought what we saw from Jaden was way better than expected, and I thought he would be good. Obviously, the biggest concern with Jaden was, like, can he stay healthy? Because he looks like he has a thin build. We saw the same thing in Washington with RG3. When he came out that year, he was excellent that freshman year at Washington, but then he got hurt and he was never the same. So, but what I saw from Jaden was just complete control of the entire offense, complete control of the game. Looked like he was an MVP style player in his rookie year. So I expect that to continue. Plus, he's going to get better weapons over this offseason. They're going to put him in a really good position to be successful. And I expect him to be really, really good next season, especially from a fantasy specific standpoint, because obviously fantasy rushing is important. So that leads me to, as I'm trying to remember here, add Lamar Jackson, right? So right there, I've got 4 of the top 5 just off the top of my head in who I'd be looking at fantasy wise.
Joe Burrow?
He's probably in that conversation at 5 or 6. I'd have to think a little bit more. I'll have to see how it develops, right? Does T. Higgins stay in Cincinnati, right? Yep. The thing is, love Burrow. I had him as my MVP pick this past season. Obviously, it didn't happen. They had a really terrible start to the season, Cincinnati. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. Fantasy-wise, though, he doesn't run, right? So it sort of has that negative effect because he's not rushing yards, which are cheap and easy. But in the fantasy game, you can be an average quarterback and be an excellent fantasy player. And you can be an excellent quarterback and be a very average fantasy guy. Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes, right. That's what came to mind.
I do like Joe Burrow a lot, but let's see what happens with that offense, right? Because if he only has Jamar Chase and he doesn't have T. Higgins, I like Joe Burrow. He'll have a good season, but is he going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback? Questionable.
Gotcha.
No, I was gonna talk about Lamar Jackson because I think he's in the top 5 myself.
Yeah,
I thought he should have won MVP myself personally, but
no, I thought
Josh top 5 fantasy. I'll say this.
No, absolutely
top 5 fantasy because he gets those rushing yards easily, right? He just easily. And when you're getting those rushing yards, you're just much more valuable as a fantasy asset.
Exactly. Even with Derrick Henry as your running back, he can still put the points up. He's a stud. I like him.
And you're not worried about his injury. I mean, a couple of years back, he was out. Significant amount of time. Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too worried. I mean, he showed that he was healthy last season. Everyone is.
That's true.
In the NFL, anyone can get injured very quickly. If I had a chance, I would draft Lamar Jackson, no problem. I will say this, just thinking about it right as we're talking about it, those are 4 really elite quarterbacks in a fantasy perspective manner. And I haven't really even given more time to dive deeper into what other players could be, potentially very valuable at the quarterback position on an upsides kind of play. But I think the quarterback position, it's got a number of players that you can stick in, right? So it's interesting to watch how fantasy goes, right? It used to be that, like, for example, one thing I stood on fantasy for the last couple of years I thought was more valuable than others is I thought kickers mattered. I thought it was really important to get a top flight kicker. So I was very big on the Brandon Aubrey train for a couple of years now. Obviously this past year, Chris Boswell was incredible, but I try to think about things when it comes to fantasy a little differently than what you read because of 2 reasons. One, I think a lot of the fantasy media doesn't know what they're talking about at all. And it's just sort of people that have been put in these positions, but they actually don't know what they're saying. They just say it. So it's like, because it comes from some source, they're getting more credibility. But I would say no matter what, even if you do agree with what they're saying, too many people are watching, listening to that if you have the same strategy as that, you're no different. And the only way to really win at anything is to be different. And to be different is to kind of be contrarian regardless. You have to think about a way that's a little different. And so I always just try to think about things a little differently and just be different because you have to if you want to win. Doing the same thing as most of the other people is not going to get you anywhere. You're just in the same pool, same place.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So what type of fantasy leagues do you play in? Auction types or which ones do you play and which ones do you prefer?
I play all of them, honestly.
Okay.
I think I would say I prefer your 12-team redrafts where it's a new season each year and it's all set up. I do like auction, but they're very few and far between overall. A lot of people are not into them the same way. You have to get a serious group together. I think that's a really fun because that really tests your value. Like, how can you value players, and stuff. And that's a really good time, right? Like you do a normal snake draft and a redraft league. A lot of that is going to be determined by where's your auto random pick set up. Can you even get certain players, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of the way it's set up and the way it is. So it is what it is. But I like auction if I had the choice, and more importantly, I just like that 12-team redraft because it makes it kind of fun. Now I'm in some dynasty leagues. Like I've got a dynasty league that I got into from a bunch of content creators last year. It's cool, it's different. But if I was going to say I had one, give me that 12-team old school redraft league. Let's do it. Play it fresh each season, like it's a new year, and get after it.
Exactly.
So you said you played 5 the year before.
Yeah.
And then this past year you played 7. Were the 5 people that you 7 or 8? So
yeah, something like that.
I'm assuming, and I shouldn't assume, just let me ask the question. The 5 that you played with, I guess it'd be 2 seasons ago, was that people that you've known for a long time, or you were just getting involved in these?
No, those are all people I pretty much knew. I don't like to play too many. I don't really play the random leagues. I like to play. I got a college league. I got my a buddies league. I got a different community league, and so I don't really just play in just random leagues. It's like I'm in a league with people I know. That's that connection. That's why you do fantasy at some level. You want to play with people that you can talk trash to, have fun, like connect in real life. Plus, you're playing with each other. So it's always some forms of leagues. The only time I'm playing with random players, let's say, is like if I'm doing best ball and you just have a best ball team in Underdog or Drafters.
Right.
Okay.
Gotcha. Well, I have another question. All right. So I know you have a financial background. You went to Syracuse. How does that play into your thought process of fantasy, or does it?
I think it does a lot, actually. I think the thing about sports, what I love about sports since I was a young kid, is numbers and the statistics, right? And the stats. I could always relate to the numbers, whether it was, in football, what's the percentage that the quarterback completes his passes on, and what is good and what is not. And I can always remember numbers very quickly and have a really, really core understanding of them, which made it easier to kind of connect with sports, who's good and who's not, because I could understand the numbers from a young age, what they kind of mattered and did. And so for me, a lot of times I like to just look at sports and fantasy specifically as like a form of financial kind of numbering. And so I look at the stats. A lot of times I look at them all as assets, the players and the names, and I try to dissuade myself from getting too caught up on like, what's the player's name? Because a lot of times in fantasy, you see a player's name, and if they're like a star in real life, you assume they're better fantasy, but you can oftentimes find really great fantasy stats from a guy whose name is not that popular. And so I think that allows me to get a little bit of an advantage, overall in my fantasy playing, because I ultimately am a very good fantasy player. I'm not the best, but I'm certainly a competitive player no matter what, and always have a pretty solid squad.
All right, Maxwell 6'4", lots of 6s and 4s. Passionate about. Yeah,
it is a lot.
There's this much chat sharing. So reach out to me on Discord. All right. Thank you, Maxwell. Great question.
There you go.
I think you're promoting your Discord. Well, that's fine. Thank you for the comment. All right, so we're about 45 minutes, and that's what I said we would do. Let's see. Do you sell this information? Subscription based on X? If you don't, I will pay for some of this information.
Yeah, no,
don't sell it to anybody else, just me.
Yeah, no, here's what I'd say is, for a long time, I've always done content and sort of tried to help, whoever for free and just through my social presence. And I've done that for a while. Over the last couple of years, I've sort of trialed different things, and with the idea of trying to, provide valuable information. And so we'll see next season when we get closer to summer. In the off season, I'll probably have some type of off season guide or primer. And I definitely did calls last year with a number of great, people from Twitter and from X and from social media that wanted to talk more. And I don't sell stuff on a regular basis. I don't have any subscription service ultimately because I like to try to make it valuable and free. But there'll be some stuff next year, and we'll see that in the off season.
Awesome. Because I can imagine you got to have a lot of people
DM.
No, I was gonna say you must have a lot of people that come up to you and like, should I take McCaffrey with the number 1 pick? Who should I take with my number 1 pick this year? And it all depends on what you.
Yeah, a lot of people have questions, and a lot of people, they want some help, and I don't have all the answers. Look, I just like anybody else. I put my shoes on the same way, but I do have a winning track record and pretty good at it. And so I think it's a good helping type of guidance that I could provide and give food for thought, at least on certain players. Last year I was really big on Chuba Hubbard coming into the season. So I'm usually very good at figuring these things out and have a pretty good track record. And I think it's shown by the growth in my social presence, specifically inside of fantasy and sports.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. All right. I'm seeing here on X. I hate calling it X, but anyway, that you were off social for a while and you're traveling through the Rocky Mountains. Is that right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
Where did you go besides the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah, so I was in Aspen, Colorado, skiing, and so I got to do the I-70 drive, and it dawned on me when I was doing it. I said, this is one of the most beautiful road trips that anyone can do, because I've driven all throughout the country probably at this point on most of the very beautiful road trips that you would do. And that one in the Rocky Mountains is it's just breathtaking, the way that nature just shows itself. And so it's beautiful. And yeah, that's right. I've been, as I said, when fantasy stops and sports, I like to take a break. A lot of people can get too addicted to social media. For me, I think it's really important to stay level-headed and grounded and have some fun with people on social media, but I'm a much more impactful person in real life. And so I like to kind of balance the two. And when it's the off season, especially for football, I try to take advantage more of it. So I've been spending a lot of time off of X, but you'll see me back in the future.
So you're not watching the combine in Indianapolis on NFL NFL show? No.
I am not.
You're not doing your mock. You're not doing your mock drafts.
Not. And you know what? The funny thing is, like all of the stuff that's being done, mocks and scouting, the scouting combine stuff, none of that matters. Let me tell you the truth. Like, right? Like usually what you find out is the guy that jumps so high at the scouting combine and then he zooms up the draft board. And then in a year, he's like, oh, he actually doesn't know how to play football. He just jumps high. Or the mock drafts today are going to change 7,433 times until actually the draft. That what's the point of reading today's mock draft? Because I can read tomorrow's and the next day and the next day. There's just an insatiable appetite to feed your brains media, and I try to stay out of that.
Very cool. All right. Chris, you have any other questions?
No, you couldn't have said it any better right there. If you read too much shit, you know, what's that saying? Too many chefs in the kitchen or some shit like that. Just wait till you get close before you start making your educated.
If anything, read the mock draft like the night before the draft. At
exactly.
Least
right. Exactly. Exactly.
What's the point of the mock draft in freaking February? I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, they got to fill the content quota. They have a content quota to do. So now
exactly
they have to do it. All right. Tell everybody where they can find you. I'm sure they already know, but
yeah,
please, the platform is yours.
I appreciate it, Art, and thank you, Chris and Art again for having me. It's been really fun to just chop it up and chat. I hope you invite me back sometime later in the season before we start next season. I'd be happy to come back and talk more and dive into it. But you can find me on X at Michael Rippey. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram if you know how. If you really want, you can email me, michaelrippey at gmail.com. If I can and don't miss it, I'll try to reply. And if you're looking for fantasy content, don't worry, it'll be back later this year when we get closer to the season, because I'm not going to put out a mock draft in February, but I might put out a mock draft about fantasy football right before the season. So have a good one. Thanks for having me. It's always a good time.
All right. Thank you for being
Absolutely.
here. I hopefully you'll be not as busy because you're a busy man towards fantasy time. Maybe we can get back together. We will not be doing, like you said, a mock draft in February, March. So
I can throw this out now. That's my mock draft. No, okay.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Thank you everybody for listening. You can find the Art Vigil Show with Chris Larkin as well every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, either at 5:30 or 6 p.m. Probably should nail that down. We should probably do 5:30 p.m. for those days. And of course, you can download Undefeated Live. I didn't want to talk about Undefeated Live too much today because I really want to enjoy Mike's comments. So, all right, Chris, any wise words before we get going?
I'm completely stumped. I'll just leave it. I'll leave it in silence.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We will see you tomorrow and have a great evening.
Peace.